Welcome to Masters of Regeneration Radio. Conversations with humans who dare to reimagine our place on planet Earth. Earth is changing fast. Evolution happening in real time. An intimate, circular understanding of nature and living systems. We are the land. The land is us.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Masters of Regeneration podcast. Just a quick reminder that the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you and everybody reconnect to a more evolutionary understanding of our place on the planet. It's about our relationship, a more cyclical relationship to the environment around us, and obviously our place in the food chain. So today, I'm really excited to be talking to Erik Oberholtzer. He's the CEO and co-founder of Tender Greens. They have several locations in the U.S. They just recently opened Boston. Hey, Erik.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Very good. It's a rainy day here in New York.
Yeah,
It's good.
I'm in Bogota, Colombia right now. It's been raining for like a month. I miss Venice.
I know. Dry and pleasant all year round.
Yeah. So you and I met in LA about 3 years ago or something like that, or 2.5 years ago. I can't remember, at Metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the time when you had tried introducing grass-fed beef to Tender Greens.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned something about how many people you feed a day in LA, which was a pretty large number. I don't remember exactly what it was. You feed a lot of people on a daily basis.
We do.
You're a fine casual restaurant, and you offer really good quality food, and you also care about the whole food cycle, clearly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, I'm a chef by background, athlete my entire life. Holistic wellness has been part of my lifestyle for just about ever, 30 years of meditation, etc. Tender Greens is a reaction to, at the time, 12 years ago, a void in the marketplace. There weren't any restaurants offering what Tender Greens does today, which is seasonal home cooking at its core. If you had the benefit of the California seasons, and you had a home cook that just happened to be a chef. So the food, the ingredients themselves, to your point, are the highest integrity, almost always, whenever possible, from local farmers and artisans who we have a deep, long relationship with, and in some cases, like Scarborough Farms, an equity partnership with. And we're inherently healthy because we use great ingredients and we prepare them simply, so there's obviously nothing processed or fake, but we sort of use very simple technique so that the character and elegance of the raw ingredient is preserved, and then we just add what we need in terms of technique and seasoning to elevate it a bit without hiding anything. We're sort of plant forward, but not vegetarian or vegan. So what that means is we really lead with delicious, craveable plants, and then garnish with high value animal proteins, where an animal protein like a steak or a chicken or a fish might be appropriate. And then to your point around grass-fed, over the years there was a lot of feedback and chatter about the value of grass-fed cattle versus corn-fed or corn-finished. And we always favored range, sort of pastured raised cattle that was then finished on grain for the last maybe 2 months of its life, but still owned by the rancher, not by a feedlot. And the reason for that is it helps finish out the marbling, which everybody likes. The fat that will add flavor, juiciness, and a tender experience. Without the use of growth hormones or antibiotics that everybody is against, ourselves included, and that way we have a consistent product that people really love. We switched. We started to, let's say, migrate to a grass-fed animal. One, because of some of the environmental arguments related to animal feed, and also a lot of our customers were asking for it. There was a belief that grass-fed was both better for you and better for the environment.
Yeah.
The issue there is it's inherently inconsistent, because the grass isn't always green. So if an animal is out in the pastures, the grass in the spring is different than the grass in the winter, and that's going to change the flavor of that animal over time. And then they don't put on as much weight. They don't put on as much fat, which makes it leaner and therefore, perhaps a little bit tougher, and a bit more gamey, a little bit more flavor forward, which some love and others find it off-putting. So that day that I spoke at Metal, there were some in the audience who said, "Why did you change your beef?" And I sort of gave the explanation similar to what I just shared, and it was interesting because a lot of people thought we were going cheap, and we were actually spending more money. People thought we were somehow diluting, and in fact we were doubling down. And that's sort of the tension in the food world, that sometimes what we believe to be true and we believe to be part of our ethos isn't translated into our our likes, which means we say one thing, but we vote with our dollars towards something else, which becomes very confusing for a restaurant that is trying to accommodate both philosophical belief system and point of view and sort of the craveability factor. It's an ongoing process.
You're at least aiming to take the steps, or taking the steps in the right direction. I mean, it's clearly not a process that will happen overnight, and probably in 10 years' time, prices will be completely different. Regenerative practices will have a lot more impact, and it's a whole process.
Yeah, and there's not a clear answer to anything.
Yeah.
So to suggest one thing's right and another's wrong, it doesn't. That's a danger in this space. Oftentimes you're either on the left side of the spectrum or the right side of the spectrum, but the reality is, much like the politics in our country, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And if you're well resourced and you have access to everything, then your choices are different than if you're in a food desert or if you're 300 miles outside of a city center. So we have to be careful, and I always say this when I'm having these conversations on the west side of LA. I'm sitting in Justa with a bunch of very privileged foodies, and we're talking about carbon sequestration, permaculture, and blah blah blah. These are all idyllic concepts that we can support, but we don't represent the broad audience out there. So I'm more of a pragmatist, and though I may personally have a somewhat purist perspective on things because I have that privilege, and we might have sort of pure aspirations as a brand, but we're also realistic in what the supply chain can support, what we can afford, what our guests can afford on a daily basis, and that there are always going to be some compromises along the way. And as long as, to your point, we're always moving in a direction that's a better version of our yesterday's practice, then we're moving the needle. And if everybody's doing that from whatever point they're in, then the entire system's moving. So movement or improvement for McDonald's looks different than movement improvement for Tender Greens or Whole Foods or Patagonia.
Yeah.
But if we all collectively are challenging ourselves to move the needle towards a better, more sustainable future that's also craveable and good, then we're moving the entire the entire world versus worrying so much about an isolated silo of self-interest.
Yeah. To give the audience some perspective, you have 28 locations across the U.S. And how many people a day do you feed total? Do you know, or is that crazy to ask, or an average?
Fluctuates, but we're probably feeding about 25,000 people a day.
In each location or total?
No, across the group.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That's a lot of people.
Insignificant.
Yeah, that's how many people a month? That's 25,000, 252 million. That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we're going to put one of those signs that McDonald's used to have over a million, over a billion. So, fed. But and that carries a lot of responsibility. The bigger you are, the more responsibility one has to do the right thing, whatever that means to the collective audience and collective consciousness of the brand.
Sweet. And what's kind of like, you talk a lot clearly about your concept or your philosophy at Tender Greens, and what's the idea behind both how you compose your plate, but also how you compose your relationship with your suppliers. You said that you have some that are almost partners, or you share equity or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we can get like a picture of the whole ecosystem of Tender Greens and all the actors in it.
Yeah, so it always starts with the ingredients, and even before the ingredients, I believe a core belief system. So that's to say, what are your values as an individual, as a founder, and then by association as a company or brand, and those become the non-negotiables that inform every decision. So, as it relates to farm relationships, I need to have a personal relationship with every farmer. I walk every ranch and every farm from the birthing and the moment of birth or hatching in the case of a bird to the kill floor, which may sound jarring, but it's really important for me personally to do a deep sort of Portlandia-esque dive into every ingredient. And examples of that would be, this coming Wednesday, I'm going down to Pennsylvania to Zimmerman Farms, which is a Mennonite farm, just to see, the entire process, how they, the conditions in which they incubate the eggs, how they raise the chickens, the conditions in which they're raised, how the birds look, whether they look healthy or stressed. And then, what I like to say is the only bad day for the bird, which is the day of processing.
Yeah.
And, our standard is that the birds go through a gas tube, so it puts them to sleep before there's any incision or bleeding. And that way, there's no risk of either stress or pain. So there's no way to paint a really pretty picture around animals as food. There's life and death involved, and unfortunately it is what it is. And the more connected I am to that process and the care with which these animals are handled, the more comfortable I am in in selling them.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to experience that, but we certainly would share every last detail because we vetted it and we're comfortable with it. And I do the same thing with cattle. We have an aqua farm down in Cabo, and or actually La Paz in Mexico. And the same thing. We see the breeding process where they use the wild fish as breeders, the hatching, the incubating of these fish, and ultimately the live pens out in the open ocean, which I've swam with the fish eating their feed. So when I say deep dive into our supply chain,
That's awesome.
I kind of mean it literally.
Yeah. And what do you feed the fish, for example, in Baja?
The fish in Baja, they're little pellets, all natural, or I don't know if they're certified organic. Obviously no antibiotics, no hormones, nothing, no dyes. It's just all natural feed, but it's a feed that it's sort of like what you would give your dog, so that the dog's getting complete nutrition versus I made the mistake of trying to cook for my dog, and it just throws the dog off balance. As much as I thought I was doing a good thing, I wasn't. And it's the same thing with fish, that you give them a complete food supply that is going to keep them healthy naturally. And when I say I ate it because if it's good enough for me, then it'll be good for the fish. And frankly, it tastes pretty good. It tastes like nori. So it's mostly
Wow, that's
seaweed.
awesome. So let a quick parenthesis. So for people to understand the difference between, I think today I try to encourage my students and the people I talk to be more specific about ingredients when we talk about meat, when we talk about feed, when we talk about fish. You can't just generalize anymore, because one meat is not, red meat. There's no such thing as one red meat, right?
Right.
And the same goes for feed, right?
Yeah.
Could you share a bit about what would be like a conventional feedlot cow feed or fish farm feed versus a blue algae and who knows what else, all sorts of seaweed type of feed? Healthier version?
I think there are a few points of interest, whether it's feed for cattle or feed for fish. How is that feed produced? So, we all know about GMOs and monocropping of soy and corn, and what is the environmental impact of those crops on the environment, and then how does that feed being grown for animals contribute to negative environmental impact? So there's environmental, and then there's what is the impact on the cattle? I think there can be arguments on both sides around GMOs and whether they're good or bad. That's a long debate, and it's somewhat heated and politicized. I would say that there's probably a place for genetically modified ingredients in some cases. I don't think we should deny science and genetics, but there's also a dark side to that. So
Totally.
we
Yeah.
don't use anything that is genetically modified because it's such a heated topic. But I can make a reasonable argument for the use of GMOs in some circumstances. Um, the fish feed would be the same thing. Is it grains? Is it soy? Is it land crops? Or is it product that is harvested from the natural environment without impact? So, you don't want feed that might be organic or wild or natural, but they're raking the ocean floor and they're disrupting the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So you really have to dig deep, really deep, to understand what all the touch points are along um, the production of animal feed.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, are there any inputs into that feed, dyes, hormones, antibiotics, etc. So there are a lot of opportunities to sort of juice up feed, and that's, I think, what freaks people out,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. And when the reporting or the labeling is opaque, um, we that also becomes a problem. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in food. So the value of third-party auditors can bring some added comfort to knowing that you truly are getting the ingredients and the practices that align with your values. And the further you get away from those, whether personal vetting or third-party vetting from someone who's established, might be certified organic or the Monterey Bay Aquarium or whatever. There are a lot of really legitimate organizations.
Yeah.
The further you get away from those, the more opaque it becomes, and the more opportunity there is for brands and retailers to sort of fib, and that you'll see things like all natural or local or whatever, and even grass fed doesn't
Yeah.
mean it was out on the happy prairie. It might have been in a feedlot eating
Hay or something like
genetically
that.
modified alfalfa
Yeah.
and trumped up on hormones and antibiotics. So it gets really confusing.
Yeah. One point that for me really drives the idea back home is I visited this biodynamic farm near LA last year, and
Mm-hmm.
right next to them was an organic berry farm.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the biodynamic farm was lush and green and beautiful despite the drought, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
organic farm had this yellow, dry, dead soil, and they had their white structures, and they were just growing their little berry factory, it seemed,
Right.
right? And so the point that the what really drives it home for me is the idea that when you're producing food, you're a manager of an ecosystem. You're not just a factory for one product in a way.
Right. Right.
So what you were saying about the fish and the feed and how it affects the water and all that stuff, that I think, and that's a relationship, this idea that a more the more we shift towards a more cyclical understanding of our relationship with the environment, the more we can understand it, and the better we can move in the right direction. I think,
Yeah, and I
I
think
just,
there are a lot of different, systems. It's
yeah,
I
exactly.
had this conversation the other day. Biodynamic farming is awesome, but it's not going to feed the world.
Oh no, totally. Yeah, it's too
So
expensive. It
you have
doesn't yield as much. Yeah.
right.
What do
So
you?
so
Yeah.
we ask ourselves, where can we scale,
Hmm.
a biodynamic farming system, while at the same time um, handling that in what many people refer to as the industrialized farming system or monocropping, which is the far ender. How do we begin to plan in some diversity within those crop systems and crop rotation and no-till, et cetera. And, it's baby steps because those are such massive, industries that you can't just go from industrial to biodynamic.
Well, those would seem to be the two extremes of the spectrum, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, and if you look at the food system, if you look at maybe Japanese on the high end, right, as the example of a biodynamic restaurant, let's say.
Yeah.
And then you might have, I'm going to use McDonald's just not to beat them up, but you have McDonald's as the biggest example of the industrialized food system. Japanese can continue to push the envelope of purity, and that purity, that aspirational world that we all would love to be part of, kind of just moves the needle of perfection, while McDonald's might just shift the amount of beef or the quality of beef it's using in its burgers, and maybe it substitutes 15% of the beef with mushrooms or high value grains or something, which can do incredible positive things for the entire food system just by that little tweak. It might even provide a better, healthier, more complex meal for those who are eating that, and they might even do it at a price point that's a little bit less than all beef. And then in the middle, you've got groups like Tender Greens that are playing the middle and moving towards the ideals of Japanese, but also grounded in the reality of scale and size and price and a broader audience. And I think, again, it just comes back to that idea of we're all working towards a better version of the world.
For sure. That's awesome. So your ingredients are not necessarily all organic, or are they? Or is organic just a certification label that is not necessarily... I'm just trying to, illustrate the point for the audience that organic is a label and it's not necessarily great for the soil,
Well, it's a label, and there are 5 labels. I think there are 5 organic rating systems in the United States.
Okay.
So that already, there's confusion and complexity in that.
Yeah.
There, to your example of biodynamic versus the organic berry farm, there are still allowable inputs into the soil and onto the plant that are certified organic, let's say pesticides or fungicides or whatever, that might surprise people in some cases. So we're our position on this is we require organic practices, whether there's a certification or not. We value our relationship with farmers and our own vetting over a third party. But when we can't get to that farm for whatever reason, maybe it is an avocado farm in Mexico or something like that, then we require a third party audit that attaches a more rigorous oversight than if we were to walk the fields ourselves.
Yeah.
So same, the short answer is everything is farmed to organic standards, but because of sometimes the amount of regulation, whether it's, in the case of Scarborough Farms, where they rent most of their farmland and they're always at risk of losing that land to developers. When it takes 3 to 7 years to just get that soil certified, that's an expense that they're too it's too big of an expense if you're at risk of losing that land at some point.
Yeah.
So what they do is they put the resources into just doing the right thing. They're going to farm organically anyway, whether it's certified or not. And because of our relationship with them and our own audits, we know that they're honest.
Sweet. So I'm going to take a wild guess, and Tender Greens is mostly in the East Coast and the West Coast, or are you guys also
We are
in the
in
Midwest?
26 restaurants we're based in Los Angeles. We have 5 up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, 2 in Orange County, and 5 down in San Diego. And then we just opened our first restaurant in New York City, where I'm sitting, about 2.5 months ago, right just off Union Square. So we've got the Green Market every other day.
Oh, that's amazing.
20th and Broadway, and we just opened up in Chestnut Hill in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, right by Boston College. And a lot of our growth now will be here on the East Coast, New York, Boston, Philly, and DC. And I'm spending a lot of time here visiting the farmers. And now that the weather's better, I can go and visit these farms. It was a little cold in January, but
No kidding,
we're working with farmers out of Pennsylvania, where I grew up, upstate New York, Jersey, and then we've also partnered with Gotham Greens here in Brooklyn. They grow on rooftops. Most notably, on the rooftop of Whole Foods, and now they have a fully automated farm in Queens, and that way we can grow greens year round because those systems are agnostic to weather.
Sweet. Do you have any plans to, you're clearly doing, trying to reach as many people as possible and provide as a menu that's as healthy as possible as well.
Yeah.
What's the future looking like? Do you have any plans for moving more into the Midwest or reaching all those food deserts you were talking about, or how do we approach that?
Yeah, that's so. I'll answer. I think that's a 2-part answer. One, yes, on the Midwest, starting with Chicago, and then the neighboring cities in the Midwest. We'll also go to Texas at some point, Houston, Dallas, Austin. And then, in terms of food deserts or under-resourced communities that are challenged with food, maybe they have convenience stores and fast food chains. Right for now, we're working both in the for-profit and nonprofit space. On the nonprofit side, I sit on the board of CLA, which runs the Hollywood Farmers Market and 9 other markets around Los Angeles, with a mission to bring good food to under-resourced communities.
Okay.
And we're working on a project in Landmark Park, just sort of Baldwin Hills area, and that's in partnership with the mayor's office, Mayor Garcetti, Mendocino Farms, Erewhon Market, and the Sola Food Co-op. And this is an effort to come in and create something really special and unique that is run by the neighborhood, for the neighborhood, with our our support and mentorship. So, if you think of Shark Tank, Mayor Garcetti calls us Dolphin Tank because we approach it with a little bit more heart.
Yeah.
But we would sort of sponsor and support to some degree local entrepreneurs in incubating their ideas and creating something unique to the neighborhood, but with the sort of the philosophy and all of the learnings that we bring from an Erewhon market, a Tender Greens, or a Mendocino Farms. So that's an example of where we can influence change for the better in these neighborhoods without putting one of our brands there that may not be fully supported at this stage.
Absolutely, yeah.
So meeting people where they're at.
And are those is that support for entrepreneurs around food projects or not
It would be
necessarily?
food.
Yeah.
Yeah, exclusively food on this. So it's not like a maker's space or an incubator space
Yeah.
for tech. It's all about food, and it's all customer facing.
Beautiful.
So and then we're going to work with Art and Practice, which is adjacent to our building, and employ quite a few of the foster youth who are in the community. So that ties into our mission at Tender Greens to break cycles of poverty in foster youth through food education, jobs training, and sustainable paths forward in the industry.
So if I get it correctly, you're also providing the education, like the nutritional education, or the kind of like helping these people relearn how to eat or to build a balanced plate, a more balanced nutrition, rather than just bringing food. Sorry, just rather than just bringing food to underprivileged communities, you're actually
exactly. We're not doing an airdrop into South LA. We're going in and offering a better food solution that is reflective of the cultural identities and the tastes of the neighborhood, and doing it in a way, you might do a taco or even barbecue, but done with better ingredients, with maybe a lighter hand on certain items, maybe less of the meat, more of the plants. Still absolutely relatable, still very craveable, but inherently healthier, both for, again, the environment because of the supply chain that we support, and for the body. And then as people eat clean food and good food, it's as much of an addiction as high fructose corn syrup and fried potatoes. So, and we know that because a lot of our employees come from these neighborhoods, and they come to us with issues, health issues, obesity rates that are elevated, all related to food. And as they are exposed to the ingredients at Tender Greens, they begin to shift their food preferences. And with that shift in food preferences, they begin to shift their health problems. They lose weight. They might go out and get a gym membership. We work a lot with Equinox Fitness and Orange Theory. And over the course of time, what we see is these folks who came to us with, high caloric sort of eating behaviors shift to more plant forward, better balance, cleaner tastes that then they take home and they take back to their neighborhoods. But if their neighborhoods have good food and other options, and they have to fall back on all old behaviors. So we know that if you offer people delicious alternatives to what they're currently eating, over time you'll shift behavior.
Yeah, that is awesome. Sounds like a solid community. Can I ask how many employees or how many people are involved in Tender Greens?
We're at about 1,300 now on our team.
That's not a small team either.
No.
No, I believe so. I mean, once, people start eating cleaner and a more balanced plate, I'm sure, if you start feeling lighter and thinking more clearly and your diabetes is gone or whatever it is, I mean, who doesn't want to feel better, right?
Yeah, self-esteem
Yeah.
improves, and everything else.
Yeah.
Right? It just compounds in the same way that
Sweet.
the negative aspects of sort of foodborne health problems can compound.
Yeah.
The benefits compound as well.
I mean, even if it's not organic and pastured, I'm not talking about tender greens, just generally speaking, it's a lot better than if you're used to eating a high processed carb diet from McDonald's or Taco Bell or any other, food chain that's very low in nutrition and very high in calories and inflammatory stuff.
Yeah, and that takes us back to the let's meet people where they are,
Yeah,
and it's pointless, honestly, to talk about organics
yeah,
in a community that one right now can't afford it,
yeah,
and a supply chain that can't service it anyway.
yeah.
But just having fresh ingredients, even if they're conventionally grown, is a win. It's a win in the right direction.
Sweet. Is there anything, Eric, that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to mention?
Um, I think if I were to tie a bow on it, I would just say that our goal is to shift people's relationship with food from sort of negative to positive, and I mean that by saying it's not about dieting or cleansing or purging or whatever. It's about enjoying food as part of one's lifestyle, and that may be moments of indulgence, and it may be an occasional turmeric shot as well. But I think if we have a great healthy relationship with food, and we share that with community, family, friends, and people in the community, I really believe that food has an important role in shifting the conversation in our country and across the world, because food touches everything.
Beautiful. I'm all up for that. The way to build habit for me is with tiny, tiny steps that give you so much satisfaction. When I do something that's very simple on a daily basis, and it gives me a sense of completion, it just gives me momentum and drive. Very cool. Very cool.
And those micro habits become, in their collective, really amazing life shifts for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do people find you or find out more about Tender Greens and your work?
Tendergreens.com,
Cool.
at Tendergreens on social, or throughout California and just about, certainly all the major cities and neighborhoods within those cities. And anybody in New York, 20th and Broadway, anybody up in Massachusetts, Chestnut Hill, and soon to come Copley Plaza in the back there.
Sweet. Oh, you're in such a good spot in Manhattan. That's awesome.
Center of the world right now.
Well, yeah, but you have the Union Square Farmers Market, which is amazing.
Yeah, and the ramp it was a nice morning at the market. The wild ramps are in abundance right now.
Oh my God, I miss that so much. Yeah, if you've never had ramps, please try them.
They're delicious.
Oh my God, yeah. It's one of the most delicious things I've ever had. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have a tiny season, right?
About 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as the winter thaws and the first spring rains come and it warms up, then they shoot up.
Yeah. Maybe we should do another episode where we just talk about ingredients.
There we go. I can talk forever.
And the delicious seasonal ingredients that pop up. Awesome. Well, Erik, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing work. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there's more and more people. I'm really excited about seeing all these people activate around the world and doing stuff not only for human health, but planetary health and meeting everybody where they are at, like you were saying.
Right.
Just there's a lot of ground to be covered.
I'm filled with optimism. I think it's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to be in the food space, and it's our time to make a difference.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, everyone, if you enjoyed the show, remember we're a cool team. We're doing all this research, connecting with all these extraordinary people, heroes, really just trying to change the world however they can. So if you enjoyed the show, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star, and share it with your peeps. Erik, I hope we can talk again soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.